Scapa Flow is one of the world's great wreck diving locations, but for many people, myself included, there can be another layer of interest as well. My grandfather, Bert, was a Navy man. He spent a great deal of time at Scapa Flow. This is his story.
Bert was born on the 25th of August 1897, and just a year later the German Kaiser and his naval evangelist Alfred von Tirpitz steered the first German naval law through the Reichstag, thereby starting a naval arms race with Great Britain that became a major cause of the First World War. The first-class battleship of 1898 was a vessel of 15,000 tons carrying 4 big guns at around 18 knots, and Britain had far more of them than Germany or any other country. Then Jackie Fisher became First Sea Lord and started a series of reforms that would drag a complacent Royal Navy into the 20th century, but he's best remembered for the creation of HMS Dreadnought, a battleship of 18,000 tons carrying 10 big guns and using turbines to deliver a speed of 21 knots. Overnight, Dreadnought made every other battleship in the world obsolete. Germany, predictably, responded by building Dreadnought battleships of her own, and the arms race moved up a gear. By then, Bert was at school, and he followed the shipbuilding contest like kids today follow YouTubers or football teams. A contest that hotted up even further with Fisher's other creation, the battle cruiser. As big or even bigger than battleships, battle cruisers carried the same heavy guns, but were less well armoured, making them lighter and much faster. And Germany was soon building her own battle cruisers, intensifying the arms race yet again. As Britain and Germany built bigger and better ships, tensions in Europe increased, bringing war closer by the day. Bert had left school at 14 to start work in a local paper mill, from where he watched the climax of the naval arms race. And then one day he read about the assassination of an Austro-Hungarian prince, the first domino of a cascade that tipped Europe into war in August 1914, just before Bert's 17th birthday. The German Navy was based in Wilhelmshaven, giving them access to the North Sea, and they could hope to get out into the Atlantic where they could threaten the seaborne trade that Britain depended on for food and raw materials. So the main wartime job of the Royal Navy was to keep the German ships bottled up in the North Sea. Closing the channel didn't take much, it's a very narrow body of water, so the bulk of the Grand Fleet was sent north to Scapa Flow under the command of Sir John Jellicoe to be the cork in the North Sea bottle. Bert continued to cycle to work each day, and when his 18th birthday arrived he went into town and enlisted for the Navy, which is an odd choice given that Barnsley is about as far from the sea as you can get in England. Maybe it was those ever-increasing casualty lists from Flanders that made up his mind. But conscription was clearly on the way as well, and years later he said that he'd thought he'd best get in early, before all the good jobs went. He also said that that was when he found out he was really called Albert. Nobody before had ever called him anything but Bert. He was posted to Devonport for basic training, and went to his first ship in January 1916. And what a ship! One of the Navy's 5 brand new Super Dreadnought battleships. The largest, fastest, most heavily armed and most thickly armoured battleships of the First World War. She was part of Jellicoe's Grand Fleet at Scapa Flow, so Bert took an overcrowded Jellicoe special train north to Thurso, then a pitching, rolling, freezing ferry across the wintertime Pentland Firth. And like most sailors, Bert hated Scapa. Bloody Scappy, he always called it. Nothing to do and nobody to do it with. In May of 1916, Valiant and 3 of her sisters were temporarily ordered south to bolster the battlecruiser fleet at Rosyth, just a few miles from Edinburgh. And that was fine with Bert. He was hopeful of some time ashore with pubs and girls. But he was disappointed, and when Valiant was ordered to sea a little before midnight on the 30th of May 1916, he headed to the Battle of Jutland with Beatty's battle cruisers. At Jutland, Beatty first threw away the support of Valiant and her sisters, and then later left the 4 British battleships under the guns of the entire German High Seas Fleet, 16 modern dreadnought battleships, including the 3 I'm hoping to dive at Scapa Flow. Bert saw nothing of the battle. His action station was below decks, where the thunderous blasts and shaking of his ship could have been Valiant's guns firing or German hits striking. He had no idea which it was. Like thousands of others on both sides, he knew that any moment might be his last. And like everyone else, he coped with the fear and did his job. Valiant was a lucky ship at Jutland. Not a single German shell struck her, though shells from her huge 15-inch guns struck a number of German battleships, probably including König and Markgraf. And Bert was soon back in bloody Scapa. At the end of 1917, he went out to Mesopotamia. He always called that Mespot, and he went via Port Said, where there presumably were pubs and girls, even for a lowly able seaman, and was posted on to Insect-class gunboats, little vessels as different from the huge Valiant as the Navy could offer. By then he'd decided he liked the Navy, signed on as a regular, and found himself posted to Russia to support the Whites against the revolutionaries, still in his tiny gunboat, and where he read about the internment of the German fleet and their final scuttling in long-delayed newspapers. He never saw the German ships, and he never would. When he mustered out, he went back to the paper mill. And when the Second War began, he was eventually called up, and inevitably went back to Scapa Flow, where he joined the brand new battleship Duke of York, one of the 5 newest, most modern and most powerful battleships in the Royal Navy. It must have seemed like the first lot all over again, and Bert still didn't like bloody Scapa. From Scapa, Duke of York took Bert north about Norway to Murmansk and Archangel, escorting Arctic convoys. In winter the cold was so intense it threatened to coat the warships with so much ice they would roll over and sink, so Bert spent much of his time with an axe chipping away at the ice and waiting for the inevitable air and submarine attacks on the merchantmen. Toward the end of December 1943, Duke of York was on escort duty again. But this time the Kriegsmarine's last heavy ship, Scharnhorst, made a sortie against the convoy, and on Boxing Day 1943 the two met near the North Cape. Only 36 of Scharnhorst's crew survived. Bert didn't see that action either. He was in a secondary gun battery, and the fighting took place at main gun range, largely using radar to control the gunfire because it was almost permanently dark. There's a memorial to the men of the Arctic convoys just outside Lynes Naval Museum. Bert finished his war still in Duke of York, now out in the Pacific and much warmer. Then he was quietly demobbed again, went back to Barnsley, went back to the paper mill, where he was still working and still cycling to work well into his 70s. Next time then, 6 simple rules to get the best from a trip to Scapa Flow.